Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time to explore a place that was once the glittering crossroads of gold, salt, stories, and stars, ancient Mali. Specifically, you're about to spend an entire day in one of its most iconic cities, Jen. The sun's barely up, the air's still cool, and your day is about to be surprisingly exhausting for something labeled boring. The mud brick walls of your home are cool to the touch, having held onto the night's chill. You lie on a woven mat. A mosquito net slightly askew after an uneven night's sleep. A rooster, who clearly hates you personally, is already crowing like he's being paid to perform. Outside, the first orange streaks of dawn smear the sky like someone rubbed sweet potato across faded blue parchment. You stretch gently, because the floor is unforgiving, and sit up. Your room is simple. Smooth mud walls, a calabash bowl on the floor, and a wooden window shutter that creaks louder than your knees. The air smells faintly of dust and last night's stew. You're alive. You're not yet sunburned, and the termites haven't eaten your sandals. Honestly, a great start. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're watching from, and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle to the doorway. There's no front door so much as a curtain of worn cloth and judgment. Beyond it lies the city, Jen, a place where trade winds carry more than just sand. Built on an island in the Niger inland delta, it's a hub for merchants, scholars, and way too many goats. The streets aren't paved, but packed flat with centuries of foot traffic and goat contributions. You step out into a labyrinth of clay walls and narrow alleys. Chickens scatter like you're late for a parade. Someone is already shouting greetings at you, and you haven't even fully rubbed the sleep from your eyes. Mornings in Jen start early because the heat doesn't wait, and neither do your neighbors. A neighbor, let's call her Auntie Fatuma, even though you're not technically related, greets you with a grin and a statement that is either a blessing or a joke about your bedhead. You mumble a return greeting, but here's the thing. Greetings are not quick affairs. In ancient Mali, a proper exchange can last several minutes, involving layered inquiries about your health, your family's health, the condition of your goats, and whether your dreams were plagued by strange lizards. Historians still argue whether this elaborate greeting culture was purely social or subtly strategic, a way to affirm community bonds in a trade-heavy, multi-ethnic hub. Either way, you're now 10 minutes into saying good morning and haven't even brushed your teeth. Speaking of which, oral hygiene here is earthy. You grab a fibrous stick from a nearby pile, your natural toothbrush, likely from a Salvadora persica tree. You chew the end until it frays, then start scrubbing. Your gums tingle, your breath smells faintly of tree bark, and your ancestors approve. You splash water on your face from a clay pot near the door. It's cool, slightly silty, and you resist the urge to mutter something about needing a Brita filter. You dry off with the corner of your wrapper, basically a large rectangle of cloth you wear toga style because buttons haven't really caught on yet. Then comes the sound every Malian dreads, the low bray of a donkey with a sinus problem. It means deliveries. Somewhere nearby, someone is hauling sacks of grain, slabs of salt, or possibly just bundles of firewood stacked in ways that defy physics. You trudge into the central courtyard, joining the rest of your household. There's a lot of family here, uncles, cousins, mysterious elders who might be relatives or just really persistent guests. You nod at everyone, get elbowed by a cousin who slept better than you did, and narrowly avoid stepping on a sleeping dog. Someone is stirring millet porridge over a small fire. The smell is warm and nutty, and your stomach grumbles like a distant sandstorm. But breakfast comes later, first chores. Because, of course, you're sent to fetch something, water, firewood, the meaning of life. And as you walk, you pass neighbors opening their shops, sweeping their stoops, and yelling good-natured insults across rooftops. Children race past you, barefoot and already somehow sticky. You glance up at the sky. The sun's climbing, the light bouncing off the earth and buildings in golden waves. It's beautiful in a dusty, slightly overwhelming way. You adjust your cloth wrap, try not to trip on an uneven step, and remind yourself, It's only just begun. At this point, you've greeted at least 6 people, been guilted into helping your neighbor's nephew find his chicken, and witnessed a heated debate over whether a certain calabash is cursed or just cracked. That's the beauty of it. Jen is alive. Always. Even when you're not quite ready to be. And as the city fully wakes, with traders arriving, smells wafting, and laughter rising from all sides, you begin to realize, a typical day here is anything but dull. You're barely out of your own courtyard before your senses are overwhelmed again. A neighbor is singing to her goats, either a song or a stern warning, hard to tell. Children dart through the alleyways, their laughter high-pitched and merciless. The ground feels warm beneath your feet now, the sun already doing its thing with alarming efficiency. Your first mission this morning is simple. Wash up properly and say hello to a few more dozen people. Seems easy, but in ancient Mali, both are time-consuming art forms. You head toward the communal washing area with your calabash bowl and a strip of cloth slung over your shoulder like you've just returned from battle. There's a line. Of course, there's a line. The sun hasn't even finished rising, and half the neighborhood's already here, balancing bowls on heads and judgments on faces. You take your place, shifting from foot to foot as sand sneaks between your toes. The well is only a few feet deep this season, and the bucket creaks with each pull. Someone behind you starts humming, a song you vaguely remember from your childhood, or maybe just a catchy jingle about goat medicine. When it's your turn, you ladle out cool, grainy water and splash your arms, face, and neck. A tiny boy next to you shrieks with laughter as he gets more water on the ground than on himself. His mother scolds him while simultaneously gossiping with 2 other women about a new wife who wears her head wrapped too high, clearly a sign of arrogance, or possibly just a tall skull. You scrub your teeth again, yes again, with your twig brush, this time adding a bit of charcoal powder someone swears, whitens teeth, and scares off evil. Historians still argue whether charcoal brushing was strictly hygienic or if it was also a ritual cleanser. You, meanwhile, are just trying not to sneeze. From there, it's time to begin the daily social marathon, greeting everyone you missed the first round. You take the long way back, not to avoid work, heaven forbid, but to make sure no elder is accidentally offended by your absence. Each greeting is layered. Did you sleep in peace? How is your household? Are your goats thriving? There's a whole emotional etiquette here, like a verbal game of Tetris, and you can't mess up the order, or you'll be the subject of dinner-table complaints. But here's the thing, it's also deeply human. These greetings tether everyone to each other. You're not just someone passing by. You're someone they see every day, someone whose well-being matters in this slow, sandy mosaic of life. You're part of the stew, so to speak. You catch sight of old Baba Amadou sitting in his doorway, the local retired ironworker who hasn't touched a forge in 10 years, but still critiques everyone else's technique. His dog barks in slow motion, an ancient beast whose bark sounds more like a philosophical sigh. You wave, and he waves back with all 5 fingers, which, in this town, is practically a hug. Further along, someone offers you a baobab fruit. It's dry, pulpy, and tastes like lemon dust. You eat it anyway, because declining food in Jen is like insulting your host's entire lineage. The fibers stick to your tongue, and you pretend it's refreshing. The city has fully woken now. There's smoke curling from every cook fire, shouts from rooftops, clattering pots, giggling toddlers, and somewhere, always somewhere, a drumbeat starting up like a slow heartbeat of the day. You return to your courtyard, just in time to catch breakfast being served. It's not grand, but it's filling. A bowl of tow, a soft mash of millet or sorghum, with a dollop of leaf sauce spiced gently enough to wake you, but not enough to require a fire extinguisher. You eat with your right hand, fingers scooping expertly. Well, somewhat expertly. Your cousin snickers as you drop a glob on your lap. You retaliate by flinging a bit of leaf sauce his way. He dodges. The dog does not. Your grandmother sighs. Loudly. But secretly, she's amused. Her laugh hides in the lines around her eyes. Everyone eats slowly. No one's rushing. This is a place that doesn't reward speed. Besides, the longer breakfast takes, the less time there is for the heavier chores waiting in the midday heat. It's a cultural skill, Strategic lingering. While you chew, you listen to the background noise. A heated debate over whether it's appropriate to sing while drawing water from the well, and a whispered update about a traveler who just arrived from Gao. Supposedly, he's brought news of a lost salt caravan, a suspiciously large hat, and a monkey that can count. The last part seems unlikely, but you've seen stranger things. Like that time someone tried to train a goat to deliver messages. It ended poorly and very loudly. A gust of wind lifts a small tornado of dust in the street. A goat sneezes, and 3 children erupt into laughter. You lean back, wipe your hands, and for a moment, just exist. The earth beneath you is warm. The voices around you are familiar. The rhythm of Jen isn't something you master. It's something you merge into. Like a river current. Like a song without a chorus. And now, belly full and limbs limbered, you know what comes next. The market awaits, which means dodging camels, deciphering pricing systems older than your great-aunt's dentures, and attempting, once again, not to buy another gourd that you absolutely do not need. But you'll try. You step outside again, this time ready for something a bit more exciting than toothbrush twigs and passive-aggressive goats. The market square of Jen waits like a slow brewing storm, quiet at first glance, then suddenly full of motion, color, and noise the moment you step closer. The ground is already warm beneath your feet. Your wrapper flaps gently in the breeze, more fashion than armor. But let's pretend you're dressed for battle. The streets hum with anticipation. You hear clinking bowls, distant bartering, and the telltale snort of a camel that either disapproves of its load or the company it's forced to keep. As you approach the market square, the world expands. The buildings here are still the same sun-baked, mud-plaster geometry you're used to, but now they seem to lean inward like curious spectators. The square itself is a living collage, wide, dusty, layered with footprints, hoofprints, and cart tracks, and buzzing with people who all seem to be yelling politely at each other. You pass a woman selling fried bean cakes, and the smell makes your stomach do a dramatic sigh, even though you just ate. The oil sizzles in a pot balanced expertly over a clay hearth, and she tosses each cake with the precision of someone who's done this since before you were born, or possibly before Jen itself was built. You turn down a narrow lane that opens into a central plaza, and here's where the magic, or the madness, really begins. Stalls crowd together like a game of clay and wood Tetris. Every seller has carved out exactly enough space to pile their goods into glorious little mountains. Shimmering salt slabs, crimson spices, nuts arranged like mosaics, bright woven cloth, and jars of questionable medicinal pastes labeled things like Hip Cure and Dream Clarity Powder. You spot familiar faces. There's Sorry the metalsmith, grinning behind a display of bangles and fish hooks. He claims his new iron comes from deep in the belly of the earth, which is either true or just poetic salesmanship. He offers you a ring for a price so steep it includes, spiritually, your next 3 lifetimes. You laugh. He laughs. Neither of you expect a sale today, but the performance is required. And then, you're swept into the rhythm of market conversation. You move from stall to stall, pausing to sniff spices, pretend to understand cloth weaving methods, and act like you know how to tell good honey from evil honey. Spoiler, you don't. It's all sticky, and one jar definitely has a wing in it. Breakfast gossip spills into mid-morning chatter. Someone insists they saw a Tuareg merchant arrive with a leopard-skin saddle. Someone else swears they heard a griot sing about a crocodile that wears jewelry. You nod like this is completely normal, because it kind of is. You finally settle at a stall selling millet cakes and steaming bowls of moni, a savory porridge that smells like comfort. You buy one with a few grains of gold dust, yes, actual gold dust, measured carefully with tiny weights and poured from a leather pouch. In Mali, coinage is almost irrelevant. Trade flows in gold, salt, and trust. Historians still argue whether Mali's trade system was efficient by design or simply held together by elaborate social contracts and communal pressure. Either way, you don't dare haggle too hard. You want to be welcome next week too. You eat slowly, people watching while perched on a low bench. A young girl skips past, balancing an entire tray of pottery on her head with terrifying ease. A man with a feathered hat gestures wildly as he tries to sell incense to someone clearly just browsing. A donkey escapes its tether and is slowly chased by a boy yelling threats that sound oddly poetic. Then you spot something rare. A traveling merchant unrolling fabric dyed so blue it almost hurts your eyes. Indigo cloth, likely brought from the Niger Bend or even farther. People gather, some inspecting the dye work, others pretending not to care while sneaking admiring glances. You sidle up, reach out, and feel the fabric. Coarse, stiff, powerful. Like the kind of thing kings would wear, or you. If you somehow win the cousin lottery and get inheritance money. You overhear a conversation near the spice stall. Apparently a scholar from Timbuktu is visiting this week, seeking rare scrolls and herbs. His arrival has already inspired 2 debates and 1 impromptu poem war. You make a mental note to watch that unfold later. It's not every day you get poetry with your garlic. The air shifts. It's late morning now, and the heat is becoming more than a suggestion. The sun isn't glaring exactly. It's more like it's leaning in, close and curious. People begin to pack up the more sensitive goods, wax, meat, things that melt or attract flies, with too much enthusiasm. You linger a little longer, pretending to shop, while mostly just avoiding your next responsibility. Someone offers you fermented baobab juice. You accept, of course. It's sour, thick, and slightly gritty, like drinking lemon pudding made by someone distracted. You smile politely and suppress a shudder. Meanwhile, your stomach, always the rebel, demands another millet cake. You pretend not to hear it. A cart full of salt slabs rumbles past, pulled by a pair of oxen with bored expressions. The slabs are huge, harvested from the Sahara and brought south through weeks of dust, trade, and deeply chapped lips. Salt here is wealth. It flavors food, preserves meat, and allegedly wards off evil spirits. Some say it even works better than garlic in romantic situations. Historians remain skeptical. You step aside as a trio of young boys run by, pretending one of them is a great warrior. He's yelling something about defending the walls of Gao from the great sand monster, which is actually just an angry chicken. The chicken wins. You smile, not because the market is magical, but because it's deeply, messily human. Everyone here is someone. Every object has a story. Every shout, every laugh, every trade, every little insult, shouted with love. This is Jen breathing. And as the first notes of a nearby drum begin to stir the midday dust into golden spirals, you know it's time. Time to find a shady spot. Time to rest, just for a while, before the next round of living begins. You leave the market behind in a slow daze, belly full of millet cakes and ears ringing with the sound of heated bartering, musical vendors, and at least one goat doing its best griot impression. The sun now sits like a judgmental cat overhead, unblinking, unmoving, and making sure no one forgets it's the boss. The midday heat in Jen is not something to argue with. It wraps around you like an overly aggressive blanket, seeping through your wrapper, baking the street beneath your feet, and turning even the most enthusiastic merchants into human puddles. This, dear listener, is the time of day when everyone collectively admits defeat and finds shade. You trudge toward your favorite resting spot, a wide baobab tree just past the mosque's outer wall. The tree is older than anyone alive in town, possibly older than Jen itself. Its trunk is thick and gnarled, like someone tried to twist a mountain into a tree shape. The branches stretch out like sleepy arms, and its shade is legendary. You're not alone in thinking so. As you approach, you see the usual crowd. A group of elders sits cross-legged in a loose circle, discussing things that matter, like rainfall, grain prices, and whether someone's cousin's daughter is truly in love or just pretending, so she doesn't have to pound millet anymore. Nearby, a few boys lie on their backs, arms folded under heads, staring at the sky like they're solving the meaning of life, or avoiding chores. Possibly both. You claim your spot near a root that sticks out like a half-buried bench. The bark is cool against your back. A breeze dances through the leaves, and for a moment, you almost forget the sun exists. The world slows. Even your thoughts seem to tiptoe now. Someone hands you a gourd of water, and you sip gratefully. It's been sweetened with tamarind, just enough to make your tongue twitch. Across the shade circle, a man fans himself lazily with a woven mat, while humming something that might be a praise song or just a heat-induced ramble. A goat walks into the shade, lies down and sighs. You relate deeply. Conversations drift like smoke. You catch bits and pieces. Someone's ox stepped on a neighbor's foot. A camel sneezed at the wrong imam. There's a new dye merchant in town, whose hair is suspiciously dark for his age. All pressing matters. Then comes the real entertainment, an argument about taxes. Specifically, camel taxes. You try not to laugh, but it's hard. The elders are deep in debate. Should people be taxed per camel or per hoof? Does a baby camel count? What about camels that only work part-time? Historians still argue whether such tax structures existed in formal ledgers or were settled on the fly by local consensus and extremely passive-aggressive neighbors. Either way, this argument has happened before. It will happen again. Probably next week. A griot wanders by, drawn by the heat, or possibly the scent of gossip. He doesn't perform this time, just plops down next to an elder and listens, eyes half closed, like a cat in human form. His presence alone quiets the crowd for a moment. Griots don't have to speak to command attention. They're living libraries, memory in motion. You yawn. Not a polite little twitch of the mouth, but a full body, jaw-cracking, soul-stretching yawn. A woman across the shade circle nods at you with solidarity. She's halfway into her own nap, hat pulled low over her face, fingers still loosely holding a gourd she gave up drinking from 10 minutes ago. Someone snores. Loudly. No one reacts. In Jen, the midday siesta is sacred. You shift to lie back, resting your head on a rolled cloth bundle. The baobab leaves rustle gently above, casting dancing shadows on your face. Insects buzz softly. Somewhere far off, a drum beats once, then goes silent, as if it too remembered its nap time. And in this stillness, your mind starts to drift. You think about the rhythm of the day, the rising heat, the pulse of the market, the smell of stew bubbling on low fires, the clatter of sandals on clay. You remember the merchant with indigo cloth, the donkey that escaped, the boy shouting poetry at a bird. It's all so vivid, and yet so comfortably slow. You wonder what your ancestors would say about your life. Would they find it dull or perfectly balanced? Would they mock your inability to haggle or praise your dedication to never missing nap time? Your thoughts tumble gently. You half hear someone mutter a proverb. The tree with strong roots laughs at the wind. No one reacts, but it settles into the shade like an old friend. Time passes without notice. The sun begins its slow retreat. The heat fades, not dramatically, but enough for people to sit up, stretch, and start speaking again in full sentences. You rise, slowly, brushing sand from your wrap. Your back cracks with a noise that might qualify as musical. Around you, the city exhales. Jen does not rush back to life. It sways back into it, lazily and beautifully. The elders stand. One sneezes, blames it on camel dust, and is immediately told it's because he never bathes. Laughter follows. Always laughter. You stretch once more, legs stiff but spirits lifted. The day isn't over, not by a long shot. There are chores waiting, children yelling, spices to stir, and maybe, if you're lucky, a chance to sneak in one more nap later. But for now, it's time to head home, before someone drafts you into pounding millet or worse, organizing the family's laundry system. You glance back at the baobab tree. Still standing, still ancient, still shady. You silently thank it for its service and promise to return. Probably tomorrow. Definitely if there's another camel tax debate. Back in the direction of home, you shuffle through soft dust, waving at children who've graduated from chasing chickens to throwing pebbles at a basket hung on a fence post. It's either a game or a deeply competitive form of fruit delivery. Hard to tell. You walk slowly, partly to savor the shade that now stretches longer across the alleyways, and partly because your body has absorbed just enough heat to feel like a simmering clay pot. The air smells like cumin and clay, and the faintest whiff of something slightly burnt. Someone somewhere is probably trying to fry plantains and is just a little too ambitious. As you round the corner toward the family compound, your aunt calls your name, or at least a version of it loud enough to shoo away birds and cause minor sandstorms. She's standing with one hand on her hip, the other balancing a woven tray covered in cloth. There's that look in her eye that can only mean one thing. It's time to work. You're tasked with assisting in a vital, ancient art, domestic logistics, which today means helping the family prepare grain stores for tomorrow's trade. And of course, arguing with your cousins about who does more work. Spoiler, no one agrees, but everyone agrees it's not them. You step into the compound courtyard. At its center lies a tall, slightly tilted mortar, the kind carved from a single tree trunk and used for pounding grain. The pestle is longer than your arm and just as heavy. Your cousin has already positioned herself with the kind of passive aggression only siblings and lifelong cohabitants can perfect. You take your place opposite her. Together, you begin the rhythm. Lift, pound, lift, pound. The sound is hypnotic, ancient, and slightly threatening to nearby insects. Grain shells fly up in little puffs, catching the sunlight like golden snow. Your cousin accuses you of being offbeat. You retaliate by nearly thumping the rim. The wooden pestles clunk dramatically. Above the noise, someone starts singing, a grinding song, meant to pace the work. You try to join in, but only remember the first verse, and mumble the rest, hoping no one notices. Someone does. They laugh. You throw a handful of millet husk at them. In the corner, clay pots rest under palm frond covers. You peek inside one. Honeycomb and bees. Living bees. It's unclear if the pot was left open or if the bees are now renters. You back away slowly. Laundry has been hung on a makeshift line, a rope strung between two support beams, and already it's being judged. One cloth is too faded, one was folded wet, and someone ahem used the good soap on a head wrap. Your aunt is now debating whether you or your cousin is the worst offender. She can't decide, so she picks both. Nearby, two smaller children are playing with dry calabash halves, clacking them together like cymbals, while narrating an imaginary battle between a lion and, possibly, a goat disguised as a lion. You glance over at your uncle, who's fast asleep under the shade, one foot twitching like he's dreaming of running, or escaping laundry duty. And then, just as you start to think the work is wrapping up, someone opens the spice basket. Now, in most places, a spice rack is a quiet corner of flavor. In Jen, it's a family battleground. Everyone has opinions about ratios. Your grandmother insists that one peppercorn more than necessary ruins an entire stew. Your older cousin counters that she has the best nose in the family and can smell when cumin is tired. You suggest maybe everyone take a deep breath and let the food decide. You are ignored. As spices are debated, sorted, sniffed, and sneezed at, the real work begins, choosing the ones to sell and the ones to keep. Salted ginger? Keep. Dried cloves? Sell, unless someone develops a sore throat in the next 12 hours. That one mystery root no one remembers buying. Absolutely keep. Might be magical. Historians still argue whether these domestic economies were intentional systems of microtrade or just the result of a million little choices made under a million baobab trees. What's clear is this: everyone is involved, and no one escapes without having at least one strong opinion about dried chili powder. Eventually, the grain is pounded, the spices are sorted, and the bees are still not your problem. You collapse next to your cousin, both of you sweating, dust-covered, and muttering about the injustice of everything. She elbows you and asks if you want to sneak away to the riverbank. You consider this carefully. The answer, of course, is yes, but not before one more task. Your grandmother appears with a bowl of soaked tamarind pods and a wooden spoon the size of your hopes and dreams. She needs someone to mash them into a pulp for drinks. You try to pass the job to your cousin. She dodges like she's trained for this moment her whole life. You mash. Slowly. Dramatically. Passive-aggressively. The scent of tamarind fills the air. Tangy. Sweet. Slightly sour. It lingers in your nose. Clings to your fingers. Someone brings water to dilute the pulp, and suddenly the courtyard smells like sticky sunlight. Children gather to taste the drink once it's mixed. A small boy with a suspicious mustache of tamarind juice proclaims it better than goat milk, which earns him a glare from a nearby goat. You try a sip. It's good. refreshing in a way that feels like a breeze turned liquid. The last rays of sun are stretching like sleepy arms across the rooftops now. Shadows grow longer, cooler. Someone yawns. Someone else starts humming the same grinding song from earlier, slower this time, more like a lullaby. And you glance at the doorway. There's still time for the riverbank. But first, you splash water on your face, adjust your wrap, and wave goodbye to the bees. The path to the riverbank isn't long, but it has a way of turning into a journey. Jen is like that. Each corner a crossroads, each passerby a small detour wrapped in conversation. By the time you and your cousin leave the compound, the air is cooled just enough to make walking pleasant again, and the dust has settled into a soft rustle under your sandals. As you pass the mosque, its great earthen towers glowing in the golden hour light, you pause for a breath. Built with sun-dried mud bricks and annual layers of fresh plaster, it looms like a sleeping giant, both ancient and alive. The scaffolding beams jutting from its walls aren't just for maintenance. They make the mosque look like it could get up and walk away if properly motivated. Maybe it's resting. Maybe it's eavesdropping. Someone's left a prayer mat folded carefully on the step. You nod as you pass, out of habit, out of respect. The mosque watches everyone, even goats, especially goats. The river is just beyond the edge of the town, where the land flattens out into low reeds and sleepy puddles. You hear it before you see it, a slow, sloshing hush that sounds like fabric being dragged across clay. It's not fast, not deep, not dramatic. Just steady, like time forgot to rush. Children are already there, of course, splashing, tossing water at each other, collecting small fish in woven baskets. One older boy is halfway through constructing a makeshift boat out of bark, string, and what may or may not be part of someone's laundry line. You decide not to ask. You and your cousin pick a spot near a worn tree stump, nature's bench. You take off your sandals and dip your feet into the water. It's cool. Not icy, not thrilling. Just the kind of cool that makes your bones whisper, "Thank you," without waking your whole body. There's a buzzing mosquitoes, of course, but you've come prepared. You slap at them with the casual, resigned rhythm of someone who's accepted there on the menu. One lands on your cousin's forehead. She freezes, cross-eyed, and you swat it gently. A rare moment of sibling peace. You both act like it never happened. Nearby, a group of women is washing clothes, their arms strong, their motions practiced. Wet cloth slaps against stone, echoing over the water. They joke and sing while they work, voices rising and falling like lazy waves. One of them calls out a teasing insult to your cousin. Your cousin replies with something twice as clever and 4 times as rude. Everyone laughs, including you. Especially you. The breeze picks up. Not much, just enough to stir the reeds and send a ripple down the river surface. You watch it move, a faint shimmer catching the last bit of sunlight. A canoe glides past, paddled by a man who looks like he's been part of this river longer than the river itself. He doesn't speak, just nods once and keeps gliding, disappearing behind the bend like a ghost with errands. You lean back, using your rolled-up wrap as a pillow. From this angle, the sky seems enormous, pale blue melting into soft orange, a few birds tracing invisible lines from tree to rooftop and back again. One looks like it might dive into the water, but it changes its mind last minute and flies off, offended by its own indecision. Your cousin finds a stick and starts drawing shapes in the wet sand. You do the same. At first, it's abstract. Then it turns competitive. Before long, you're both trying to draw the same elephant, and neither of you is winning. A child wanders over, inspects your artwork, and tells you politely that your elephant looks like a duck. You thank him for his insight. He bows solemnly and runs away yelling about frogs. In the background, 2 merchants are arguing over canoe parking. Yes, really. One insists he was there first. The other claims the tide pushed his canoe out of the way. You and your cousin exchange glances and silently agree it's not your business. But it's hard not to eavesdrop. One of them threatens to tie the other's canoe to a goat. That'd be a sight. Historians still argue whether these riverside arguments ever escalated into real legal proceedings or were just colorful rituals of social choreography. You suspect both are true. What matters is that everyone gets their say, And then someone eventually brings food, and no one's angry anymore. You're getting hungry again, actually. Not starving. Just that slow nagging. I could eat a rock if it were seasoned well feeling. But you're not moving yet. The river holds you in place. A fisherman nearby has caught something, small, silvery, wriggling in a hand-woven net. He holds it up, smiles like he's just discovered gold, and disappears toward his home before anyone asks to share. Smart man. Your cousin yawns. You follow suit. It's that kind of moment, slow, stretched, dipped in the glow of almost night. A dog shows up. Nobody knows where it came from, but it circles the group, inspects a pile of laundry, drinks a little river water, and then sits directly on your cousin's sandals. She shrugs. It's his now. He looks proud. As twilight deepens, more families drift toward home. The laughter fades, but never vanishes. The water glows, reflecting stars that haven't even shown up yet. You wiggle your toes, letting them dry in the air. You think about how simple it all seems, yet how intricately everything connects. Fish to merchant, merchant to weaver, weaver to drummer, drummer to grandmother, grandmother to tamarind. It's all one quiet, woven net. And just like that, the sky turns navy. The first real stars blink into view. Someone nearby starts humming again. A tune you've heard 1,000 times and never quite learned the name of. Doesn't matter. You hum along anyway. Eventually, your cousin nudges you with her foot. Time to head back. Dinner doesn't make itself, and you've already been accused of laziness twice this week. Any more, and you'll have to start proving people right. You gather your things. The dog stands, stretches, and follows. Apparently, you're a team now. As you leave the riverbank behind, your footprints dissolve into the sand, and the water continues on its way. Steady, quiet, ancient. By the time you and your cousin reach the compound again, dusk is draped over Jen like a worn blanket. Everything feels softer now. The sounds, the light, even the dust beneath your feet. The day has exhaled. The chaos of morning and market has given way to a kind of collective sigh. Your cousin heads off to help in the kitchen. The dog follows her like he's been promoted to security detail. You linger in the courtyard for a moment, drawn by the scent of wood smoke, spices, and whatever's currently bubbling in the communal pot. You suspect it's fish stew. You also suspect the fish is less fresh than the storyteller at market claimed. But at this point, your standards are mostly, is it hot, and can I chew it without apologizing to my ancestors? You glance around. The shadows stretch tall, slanting across the walls like sleepy snakes. A few neighbors pass by, carrying bundles on their heads, firewood, folded mats, the occasional screaming toddler. Everyone's returning. Everyone's winding down. The city is closing its eyes, one yawn at a time. You step inside the main room. The air is thick with smells, onions, garlic, smoked pepper, and that one spice your grandmother swears by but refuses to name. She's already stirring the pot, a carved wooden spoon in one hand and her usual judgment in the other. Her eyes narrow slightly when she sees you. You're late, she says, though the sun is still visible. You mutter something about being productive. She raises an eyebrow, and you immediately regret all your life choices. She gestures to the basket of okra and hands you a knife that looks like it could have a whole biography. Your job. Slice. Thinly. Uniformly. Like you respect the stew. Which you do. Deeply. As you chop, your grandmother narrates her opinions on the weather, the price of salt, the neighbor's chicken that's clearly possessed, and how stew should never, ever be stirred clockwise. You nod, partly out of agreement, partly because you're trying not to lose a finger. She tells a story between instructions. Something about a king who got cursed for stealing too many fish. You're unclear on the moral, but you're pretty sure it involves being polite to river spirits and not double-dipping during meals. Historians still debate whether these kitchen tales were based on real events or simply well-seasoned cautionary tales passed down to discourage bad manners and picky eaters. Either way, you're fully invested. Eventually, the stew is simmering. Someone sets out calabash bowls. A cousin brings in fire-roasted yams wrapped in banana leaves. Another places fermented milk in small clay cups with the reverence usually reserved for royal scrolls. The table, If you can call a circle of woven mats a table, fills quickly and noisily. Dinner in Jen is a group activity, full of overlapping stories, hand slaps for stealing bites, and the occasional debate about whether the stew is as good as last week's. Your uncle tries to convince everyone he caught the fish in the river today. You point out that he never actually left the house. He accuses you of being too observant for someone who doesn't help with dishes. The fermented milk is tangy and thick. The yams are sweet, a little charred. The stew, perfection. We're close enough to it that no one dares complain. Except your cousin, who insists it needs more heat. Your grandmother hands her a single dried pepper and a look that says, "Use this wisely or suffer consequences for 7 generations." Someone starts singing mid-meal, just softly, a hum that turns into a lullaby. The rest of the group joins in without discussing it. It's not a performance, just a shared habit, a soft soundtrack to food and full bellies. As the meal winds down, people lean back, stretch, and pass around a small bowl of water to rinse fingers. You do your part, wiping your hands and passing it on. A toddler crawls into your lap, uninvited but somehow completely in charge. You accept this fate. You look around. It's not just your family here. There's a neighbor who always forgets his own home's mealtime. A traveler who arrived yesterday and hasn't left yet. And that griot again, sitting quietly in the corner, eating slowly, eyes always watching. You wonder if he's collecting stories for some future song about lazy cousins and heroic stew preparation. Outside, night has fully settled in. Crickets chirp, frogs begin their theatrical warm-ups, and the distant thump of a drum signals something happening a few streets away. Probably music, possibly dancing, potentially trouble, hopefully snacks. People begin to drift outside again. The courtyard becomes a meeting place once more, filled with warm laughter and shared silence. You and your cousin carry bowls to be cleaned later, because right now you're full, and there's a river breeze in the air that promises peace. Your grandmother sits back, hands resting in her lap, eyes closed but not asleep. Someone lights a lamp, oil-fed, smoky but cozy. Its glow flickers on the walls, making shadows of everyone that feel taller, softer, dreamier. And you sit beside the lamp, chin on your knees, watching the flame dance. The smells of dinner still cling to your fingers. The hum of life is quieter now, but no less rich. It's not a holiday. It's not a ceremony. It's just dinner. But it feels like something more. Like something ancient and whole. Like a story being lived so slowly. It has time to become real. And somewhere in the background, a goat sneezes. The night has fully stretched itself across the sky now. A velvet dome scattered with stars, so bright they feel almost exaggerated. The moon, a lazy crescent, floats like a bowl tipped sideways, as if it, too, is waiting for someone to refill it with soup. You rise slowly from your spot by the lamp, joints mildly protesting, and step outside into the night air. It's cooler now, not cold, just that perfect, skin-tingling temperature that makes everything feel softer. The sky above Jen is vast, open, and strangely comforting. There are no tall trees to block your view, no looming buildings. Just stars, stars, and more stars, blinking like they've got secrets. The family compound is still buzzing softly. The elders have claimed the prime gossiping spot under the eaves. They speak in half-whispers, as if the walls might be listening. You hear snippets about someone's runaway cow, a rumored marriage proposal, and a cousin who tried to sell magic cola, nuts with suspicious side effects. But you have work to do, or at least, the illusion of productivity. Someone has decided that the honey jars need checking. Apparently, one of them is either leaking or fermenting too aggressively. You're not sure how honey ferments, but you're too far into the day to ask questions. The honey jars are stored in a small alcove lined with straw, calabash lids weighted with stones. You lift one, sniff cautiously, and are immediately greeted by a bee. A slow, confused bee, probably as tired as you. It buzzes once and leaves. You take that as a blessing. The honey's fine. A little runny, maybe, but fragrant and warm from the day's heat. You dip a finger in, taste it, and instantly regret it, because now every nearby ant knows where you live. You spend a few minutes securing the lids better, then help someone shuffle the jars to a cooler corner. The process involves two cousins, one dog, a disagreement about gravity, and a short speech about jar respect. By the end of it, you're sticky, but victorious. There's laughter in the courtyard again. The younger children have gathered around one of the older boys, who's balancing a stick on his nose while reciting proverbs backward, or possibly making them up. Either way, it's impressive. You're pulled into a different task next, laundry. Not washing, thankfully. Just folding. Simple, right? Wrong. Because laundry in this compound is less about fabric and more about diplomacy. Every cloth has a story. This one is Auntie Kadia's festival wrapper. That one is only to be used for funerals. This one belongs to your cousin, but somehow ended up as a curtain last week. And yes, people are still talking about it. You fold carefully. You match corners. You avoid judgmental glances. But inevitably, you mess up. A head wrap gets mistaken for a sleeping cloth, and suddenly there's a full debate about textile intentions. Someone fetches your grandmother for arbitration. She settles the dispute with a look and a short proverb involving termites and vanity. Historians still argue whether such family-level textile politics were unique to urban Mali or reflected a wider West African household dynamic. What's certain is that if you fold someone's cloth the wrong way, they will remember. Forever. Eventually, the laundry is tamed. The honey is secured. The children are quieter now, some already curled up on mats, whispering nonsense stories as they drift toward sleep. You lie back again, this time on a straw mat beside your cousin. The dog curls up between you, tail twitching in dreams. Above you, the stars are brighter than ever. The Big Dipper points lazily toward the horizon. You trace its shape with your finger, then connect imaginary lines between other stars, creating shapes you'll forget by morning. There's music now, soft, distant, as if the wind itself has picked up a flute and decided to play a lullaby. You recognize the tune. It's a common one in Jen, played during quiet gatherings, funerals, weddings, and apparently, lazy evenings like this. Your cousin whispers, "Do you think that star's moving?" You look. Maybe. Or maybe your eyes are tired. Or maybe the sky itself is breathing. You don't answer. You just sigh, content, and let the silence stretch. In the far corner of the courtyard, someone is telling a story. Not loudly. Just enough for the nearby children to lean in. It's about a merchant who tried to trade gold for a talking parrot, only to discover it spoke 3 languages, but hated everyone. You smile. That's a good one. You remember your own favorite griot tale, the one about the spirit who lived inside a drum and only came out during eclipses. You haven't heard it in years, but suddenly you can remember every beat. The wind shifts again, carrying the scent of something faintly sweet. Maybe hibiscus flowers from a nearby garden. Or maybe that's just your nose inventing comfort. Either way, you accept it. You start to hum the flute song under your breath. Your cousin joins in. You're off key. She's worse. The dog howls once, possibly in protest. You all laugh. A shooting star darts across the sky. It's fast. Blink and you'd miss it. But you catch it. You both do. You don't say anything. No one needs to. You stretch, legs sore, arms lazy. The kind of tired that's not from work alone, but from living fully. Every hour filled, every sense used, every moment soaked in. You turn on your side, cheek resting against the mat. The woven pattern presses gently into your skin. The courtyard is still. The city quieter. Even the stars seem to be blinking slower now. And tomorrow will look a lot like today. And that somehow feels just right. The sky above you is a navy sea now, stars twinkling like secrets passed between old friends. Somewhere in the distance, a drum thumps, a slow rhythm, not demanding attention, just reminding you that Jen doesn't quite sleep. It just lowers its voice. You sit up, careful not to disturb the dog now fully committed to dreaming about goats, and glance across the compound. Most of the adults have retired indoors, while a few elders remain huddled on the porch, whispering stories and softly chuckling in a way that suggests at least one of them is embellishing heavily. Then come the children. Not the loud, chaotic swarms from earlier, but the late evening ones, quieter, sticky-fingered from leftover honey, clutching bits of cloth and carved toys, heads resting on someone's lap. You're asked, very politely and then not so politely, to supervise them while the grown-ups have adult talk, which is code for drinking strong hibiscus tea and arguing about which year had the best peanut harvest. You settle on a mat, 6 tiny humans around you, buzzing with the last sparks of wakefulness. One hands you a carved piece of wood shaped like a lopsided giraffe. Another wants to play Aware, a Mancala-like game played with stones in a carved wooden board. It's part logic, part luck, and entirely prone to cheating by anyone under 10. You play a round or two, letting yourself lose dramatically. One child celebrates like he just won a kingdom. Another demands a rematch and immediately forgets the rules halfway through. A girl no older than 6 crawls into your lap and asks for a story. Not one of those real ones, she specifies. A good one. With magic. And animals. And someone falling into a well for no reason. So you tell one. You invent a tale about a talking goat who wanted to be a king, and the duck who challenged him to a dance battle. You make the goat wear a crown made of okra, and the duck carry a tambourine. You throw in a magical calabash that never empties, but only of soup, not gold, and a wise old drum that only speaks when no one listens. The children are enthralled. You've barely begun when the youngest one is already asleep, curled next to your leg like a tiny, humming burrito. The others yawn, blink slowly, and snuggle deeper into the pile of woven blankets and mosquito nets that have appeared like magic around you. Historians still argue whether oral storytelling in ancient Mali was strictly educational or delightfully chaotic. Based on your current audience, it's clearly both. You glance toward the main room, where shadows flicker against the clay wall from a small oil lamp. You can hear your grandmother's voice rising slightly, perhaps debating pepper measurements again. Comfortingly predictable. Behind you, someone is humming the same melody from earlier. You don't know the words. You don't need to. You tuck a sleeping child's head under a blanket edge and let your eyes wander upward. Above, the constellations scatter freely. Your cousin once told you that the dog star guards travelers. You thought she was joking. Now you're not so sure. You whisper to one of the older kids. See that one? That's the goat constellation. Every time you tell a lie, it eats one of your secrets. She gasps. How many of my secrets are left? You look thoughtfully at the sky. 2. She falls silent in pure horror and is asleep 3 minutes later. You lie back again, careful not to disturb your new pile of snoring responsibilities. The mat beneath you is lumpy, warm, and smells vaguely like peanut oil. The perfect mattress, really. Your arms rest behind your head. You shift one leg to give more room to a child who's rolled over and is now using your foot as a pillow. Somewhere nearby, the night frogs begin their chorus, tuning their croaks like an orchestra of wet hiccups. And still Jen hums on. A cart creaks in the distance, probably someone late returning from another compound. A pair of voices chuckle near the gate. The wind carries whispers and the scent of extinguished fires. You remember playing games like these as a child, chasing chickens barefoot, digging little holes in the dirt to hide your treasures, usually shiny rocks and once, a broken spoon you swore was silver. You remember being told stories that frightened you just enough to behave, for a day or two. Now you're the storyteller, the lap, the blanket. Time is slippery like that. The dog snorts in its sleep. A child drools on your arm. A star falls somewhere behind the mosque, and no one sees it but you. And you think, quietly, to yourself, this is the heart of the city. Not the mosque, not the market, not even the gold. It's here, under mosquito nets, between half-sung lullabies and drifting stories, in the warmth of shared space and borrowed dreams. You close your eyes, not to sleep, but to hold the moment longer, because in a few years, these kids will be the ones telling stories. And hopefully, someone tells the one about the goat king who lost a dance battle. Eventually, someone comes to retrieve the children, not because you asked. No, you fully accepted your new role as human cushion, but because someone older, wiser, and more attuned to midnight chores decides it's bedtime. There's gentle scooping, soft muttering, and a few sleepy protests that quickly melt into shoulder yawns. You're left alone again under the stars, except for the dog, who has now made himself at home directly on your foot. He's warm. You let him stay. Then you hear it, a low, rhythmic call, subtle but unmistakable. The mosque. Not the dramatic, echoing call to prayer of midday, but a quieter one. A reminder that even in rest, there are rituals. You rise, stretch, and make your way to prepare. The air is cool now. Not cold, but layered. Like the earth has wrapped itself in something sheer and quiet. You head to the ablution area, where a large clay jar sits next to a low bench. The water's cooler than you expect. You wash slowly. Hands, mouth, nose, arms, head, feet. Each motion is familiar, not rushed. This isn't about cleanliness alone. It's a moment to breathe. Sand sticks to your toes, and you don't bother brushing it off. That's part of it too. You step softly toward the mosque, the towering mud brick structure, now glowing faintly in the lamplight. The beams sticking from its walls cast long, sleepy shadows, making the place feel more like a sculpture than a building. Each beam is a handle for future repairs, but tonight, they look like outstretched arms, frozen mid-reach. You remove your sandals before entering. The ground beneath your feet is cool and smooth, packed earth swept clean earlier in the day. Inside, the space is open yet somehow close. The walls curve inward gently, the ceiling low enough to feel embraced, but high enough not to stifle. The other worshippers are already settling in, some older men in loose wraps, a few younger boys trying to pretend they're not yawning, a visiting scholar who adjusts his robe with the quiet urgency of someone trying to impress nobody in particular. The imam's voice begins, calm and even. It doesn't rise, it flows, like a river winding its way through still air. You listen, not just with your ears, but with your bones. The words are known to you. Their rhythm is familiar, but the peace they carry always feels new. You pray. You stand, you bow. You press your forehead gently to the earth. And again, it's not dramatic. It's not even particularly emotional tonight, but it's grounding, like placing yourself back inside the spine of the world. When it ends, there's no applause, no fanfare, just soft greetings, a few smiles, nods, and shuffling feet. You exit slowly, letting your eyes readjust to the dim. Outside, the wind has picked up slightly, rustling the dry leaves in the alley. The moon hangs a little lower now, casting a pale light across the tops of the clay roofs, like someone brushed silver over the city. You don't head straight home. You wander a bit, just enough to stretch your legs, to listen to the quiet hum of a city in its gentlest form. You pass a closed shop where spices were sold earlier. The wooden sign swings slightly in the breeze. A pair of sandals sits outside the door, forgotten or left on purpose, who knows. You walk past the edge of the market square, now a wide silence broken only by the creak of a forgotten cart and the occasional clatter of a very angry beetle navigating a pebble. You wish him luck. The sky above seems impossibly wide now. You try, just for a moment, to count the stars. You lose track by 12. You wonder what caravans are traveling tonight, what merchants are threading through the Sahara by moonlight, what salt is being carried, what stories are being whispered under the same stars. You imagine them, lanterns swaying, camels grumbling, and someone, always someone, singing softly to keep the rhythm of the journey. Historians still argue whether these caravan songs were composed purely for timing or served as emotional lifelines across the endless sands. You believe the latter, because if you had to walk through the desert for 3 weeks with 100 pounds of salt, you'd want a good soundtrack too. Eventually, you find yourself back at the courtyard gate. You slide the wooden latch aside and push it open. It creaks like it's been saving that sound just for you. Inside, the night has deepened. The fire is low, coals glowing like sleepy eyes. The children are fully out now, little limbs sprawled across mats like they've melted. Your grandmother snores softly from inside her room, and you feel a wave of fondness so sudden you nearly trip over a water jug. You settle onto your mat again. The dog, who has apparently been waiting for you, resumes his position near your feet. You scratch behind his ears. He grunts. In dog, that probably means welcome home. You lie back, staring up again at the same stars you've seen every night of your life, and still can't quite get used to. Tomorrow, you'll wake to roosters and heat, and someone accusing you of not washing the bowls properly. But for now this is enough. This quiet, this breath, this sky full of ancient light. The sky is still awake, but everything else has quieted to a hush. Jen doesn't sleep all at once, it dozes and shifts. Somewhere, a clay door creaks open. Somewhere else, a pot lid clinks back into place. But here in your courtyard, the only sound is the dog breathing, a steady whistle in and out, and the distant chirrup of crickets performing their unsupervised midnight concert. You're not asleep. Not yet. But you're not fully awake either. You're in that pleasant twilight of thought, where dreams start rehearsing before the curtain even rises. You think about nothing and everything. How sand always finds its way between your toes. How your cousin once claimed that yawning too much could attract spirits. How you still don't fully believe her. But also, maybe, just a little. Then comes a rustle behind you. Not threatening. Just someone getting up. Probably your aunt, who always wakes around this time to check on the coals, or perhaps to enjoy a moment of solitude before the chaos of the next day sneaks in through the chicken coop. You watch as she glides across the courtyard like a shadow in motion. She stirs the embers, adds a few small twigs, and sighs in a way that suggests her bones have begun filing complaints. Then she disappears again, and all returns to stillness. Eventually, you drift up from your mat, stretching your arms overhead. Not because anyone told you to, but because your legs have decided they need motion or rebellion will ensue. You meander across the courtyard, and your hand finds the water jar without even needing light. You drink deeply, the water tasting like clay, cool and honest. It fills you not just with moisture, but with calm. And then a voice calls, soft, rhythmic, inviting. You turn toward the direction of the sound and realize it's the music. It starts this way sometimes. Quiet, almost shy. A flute, probably reed or bone, humming a lullaby that feels older than the river. It comes from just past the wall, near the neighbor's compound. That can only mean one thing. The music circle has begun. These are impromptu, unofficial, unspoken gatherings. They're not performances, not really. More like shared dreams, cast into the air in rhythm and note. You slip on your sandals, tie your wrap a bit tighter, and head toward the sound. The neighbor's courtyard is already gently glowing with lamplight. A few figures are seated in a semicircle, one man tuning a stringed instrument with infinite patience, another with a clay drum balanced between his knees. The flute pauses, replaced now by the hollow, whispery pulse of a balafon, its wooden bars glowing faintly as they vibrate. You're welcomed without words. Just a smile, a gesture toward an empty seat, and the unspoken agreement that anyone here belongs. A woman begins to sing. Her voice is soft but firm, the kind that knows it's not competing with silence, just joining it. The lyrics are in a dialect you only half understand, but the story is clear. A woman chasing her own name through the desert, refusing to stop until it sings back. You close your eyes. The rhythm settles into your chest. Not pounding, more like a pulse, soft and deliberate. A child claps along, too fast, then too slow, then perfect for one glorious measure. No one corrects him. Someone passes around a bowl of degi, sweet fermented millet with curdled milk. You take a sip. Cold, gritty, slightly sour. Exactly what midnight tastes like here. Then the griot begins. He doesn't announce himself. He just starts talking. His voice is low, like a drum trying to remember an old tune. His words dance between poetry and prose, telling a tale of a king who disguised himself as a merchant to understand his people, only to fall in love with a blacksmith's daughter who could out-argue 3 elders and win. He pauses often, not for effect, but because the night itself wants to speak too. A breeze picks up, curling through the courtyard, rustling loose robes and feathered hats. Someone chuckles at a line you didn't quite catch. Another picks up the flute again, weaving it through the griot's pauses like thread between beads. Historians still argue whether griots performed for entertainment or education, but listening now, you're sure it was always both. The past here is a living thing, braided into rhythm and breath, told not as fact but as feeling. You watch the griot's hands as he gestures, wide sweeps, then small flicks, as if painting air. His eyes never leave the ground, but his voice reaches the stars. You lose track of time. And that's the point. Eventually, the music softens. The drums grow lazier, like they're half asleep. The balafon plays a lullaby in 3 notes, over and over. Someone hums. Someone else snores quietly, unapologetically. You take one last sip of degi, thank your host with a smile and a nod, and step back out into the street. Jen is wrapped in shadows now. Friendly ones. Shadows that know you, that carry your stories too. You walk home slowly, kicking pebbles, breathing evenly. A cat darts across your path. You tip your head in respect. The cat ignores you, as it should. You return to your compound. The dog looks up, confirms it's still you, and resumes his dream. The mat is exactly where you left it. Your wrap is only slightly more wrinkled. You lie down again. The stars haven't moved. But you have. You've traveled through music, through memory, through midnight bowls of fermented grain. You close your eyes, and the last thing you hear before sleep claims you is the echo of a drum, the sigh of a flute, and the griot's final whispered line. And so the moon kept watch, as it always had, over those who listened. Morning returns the same way it always does in Jen, without apology. It begins as a nudge. Not a blaring rooster, not yet, but the light. That gentle, gold-washed glow creeping in through every crack and corner, turning the clay walls soft again. The city stirs. You do not. Not willingly. Your eyes open to find the dog has migrated to your midsection at some point in the night, and now weighs roughly the same as a sack of millet. You grunt, shift, and somehow manage not to disturb the pile of children still asleep beside you. One of them is clinging to a sandal like it's a prized possession. You decide not to ask. You sit up slowly. Everything creaks, the mat, your knees, the world. The courtyard is quiet but not silent. You can hear sweeping in the distance, the rhythm of a broom against dust. Someone's grinding grain already. Someone else is singing about soup. It's barely dawn, and the city is already warming up. Your stomach growls. A soft, undramatic reminder that you haven't had breakfast. Or maybe it's protesting last night's fermented millet. Either way, you make your way to the water pot, splash your face, and chew on a twig brush until your gums buzz. Today, you're assigned a new task, fetching ingredients for the midday meal. This, in theory, is easy. But ingredients, in Jen, don't just mean rice and onions. They mean conversations, detours, debates over quality, and probably at least one impromptu moral lesson from a stranger. You tie your wrap, grab the clay bowl meant for the market, and head out. The streets are already sunlit. A haze of dust hangs over the rooftops, catching the morning light like a secret. Chickens cluck past. A boy balances a tray of bread on his head like he's auditioning for a tightrope act. Someone is arguing loudly with a goat. The goat is winning. Your first stop is the peanut woman. She sits at her usual spot beneath a slanting awning, surrounded by sacks and gossip. She scoops roasted peanuts into your bowl without needing to ask your name. You try to pay in good humor, but she demands gold dust and a compliment about her new head wrap. You oblige both. Next, it's the tomato man. He arrives late, as usual, claiming his canoe was stuck in mud, as stubborn as his third wife. You select 5 tomatoes, all with minor blemishes and maximum flavor. He tries to throw in a 6th, but only if you listen to his theory about fish predicting the weather. You do. It involves gill vibrations and moonlight. It's oddly convincing. Along the way, you're stopped by an elderly woman who insists you carry her bundle of dried herbs in exchange for a tale. You say yes, because no one says no to her. Her story is about a hunter who married a rain spirit and forgot to ask about her bedtime routine. It ends with him turning into a yam. You can't tell if it's a cautionary tale or a recipe. You continue, basket now fuller, arms dustier, mind spinning gently from the whirlwind of encounters. This is how Jen feeds itself, not just in flavor, but in memory. Every ingredient has a voice, every step a reason. You swing by your cousin's friend's aunt's house, because that's where the good onions are today, and also because you owe someone an apology for overcooking their rice last week. She forgives you, mostly because you agreed to help shell beans tomorrow. Bartering, after all, is an art of both food and favor. As you near home again, your bowl full, and your legs slightly wobbly. The city hums louder. Someone's grinding millet in a massive mortar. Bam, bam. A rhythm that echoes down the street. Children dart between homes, carrying bowls and water and exaggerated stories of who tripped whom. A man chases a runaway goat that's proudly wearing a scarf. No one knows where the scarf came from. You duck into the courtyard, triumphant. Your grandmother nods at the bowl's contents and only comments once about the tomatoes being a little too smug-looking. You take it as a win. Together, you start preparing the midday meal. The fire is coaxed to life. A pot, blackened from 100 meals, is placed just so. You start peeling onions with a knife that has seen several wars and possibly caused one. As you cook, people drift in and out. Some help. Some just sniff and offer unsolicited advice. One cousin tries to add too much pepper. Another insists on using last week's broth. Your grandmother makes a noise that's half groan, half growl, and everyone falls back in line. The stew simmers, thick and fragrant. You add a pinch of crushed peanuts, a splash of tamarind water, and a sprinkle of dried fish, just enough to deepen the flavor without triggering family-wide debates. The smell makes the dog roll over in anticipation. He knows this part well. While it bubbles, someone brings a lute and starts plucking idly. Not a performance, just a background rhythm. It fills the air like steam. Your cousin hums along, chopping greens with a syncopated beat. You don't speak. You don't need to. Historians still debate whether these communal cooking rituals were designed for efficiency or emotional cohesion. But in this moment, watching steam curl upward while the city dances gently around you, it's obvious. Food here is never just food. Eventually, the stew is ready. You carry it carefully to the circle of bowls waiting on the mat. People gather, some with spoons, others with bread, a few just with fingers and experience. Everyone eats, slowly, joyfully, with breaks for storytelling, sighing, and licking the back of one's hand when the pepper catches just right. You eat too, and it tastes like everything. The goat argument, the floating tomatoes, the rain spirit yam, all of it, because that's the recipe, isn't it? After the meal, the courtyard settles into a gentle lull, like a great belly exhaling after the final spoonful. Bowls are stacked, spoons licked clean, and the stew pot, now gloriously scraped to the last speck, is set aside with reverence. Even the dog, eyes half-lidded and tail twitching lazily, seems to nod his approval before sprawling into a nap that radiates satisfaction. You stretch your legs under the shade, belly pleasantly heavy. A cousin leans back on her elbows and mutters something about never eating again, just before accepting the last roasted yam from a passing aunt. The baby next to her kicks wildly, giggles, then burps with the kind of triumph usually reserved for bards finishing an epic. The afternoon is beginning to lean toward evening now, that golden hour when everything is bathed in slow-moving light and the shadows grow long and elegant, like dancers stretching after a long rest. The air cools, just slightly, enough to remind you the sun isn't as endless as it pretends. This is when the music begins to rise again, but not yet. First, the drums. You hear them from a few rooftops over, slow, spaced, thoughtful. Not a performance. Not yet. Just a rehearsal, perhaps. Or maybe a signal. 1 beat for rhythm. 2 for memory. 3 for yes, we're still here. You decide to climb to the rooftop. The stairs are uneven, the wall warm beneath your hands. The rooftop is flat, scattered with a few clay pots, and an old mat someone laid out to dry, but forgot to bring down 3 days ago. You sit near the edge, legs dangling, watching as Jen begins to glow in the light of almost night. Below, children are playing a game you once knew the rules to, something involving singing, clapping, and increasingly elaborate insults about each other's goats. A few are playing aware again, this time with urgency and accusations. One child accuses another of cheating using ancestor magic. An adult laughs, but doesn't intervene. Then the real music starts. It begins with a kora, a stringed instrument that sounds like a harp had a conversation with a river. The notes float upward, curling around the corners of houses, catching on clotheslines, tugging at the clouds. Then come the drums, patient and full. Not fast, not loud. just confident. Soon enough, there's a flute. High, clear, and a little mischievous. Like a cousin who tells you a secret, and then refuses to explain it. You aren't alone up here. A few others have climbed onto rooftops too. Some sit quietly, sipping water, others hum along. It's not a concert. There's no front row. The whole town is the audience. Or maybe the stage. And there, in the center square, where shadows have begun to pool, and the air smells of tamarind and dust, dancers begin to gather. They don't announce themselves. They don't dress differently. They just move. Slow at first, arms wide, feet brushing the ground. Then quicker, steps folding into the rhythm, hips marking time, hands slicing air. It's not polished. It's not choreographed. But it's perfect. You feel your fingers tapping along the clay. Not dancing exactly, but agreeing. The storyteller from the other night is there, too. He's not telling stories now. Just sitting by the drum, watching, smiling, maybe remembering something, maybe waiting. Historians still debate whether these evening dances were rehearsals, rituals, or something in between. But here's what they always forget. No one needs a reason to dance in Jen. Only a beat. You watch until your legs get twitchy. Until your cousin finds you and tosses a pebble at your shoulder with that look that says, "Come on, let's go look ridiculous together." So you climb down. You join the crowd. At first, you just clap along. Then you sway a bit. Then someone grabs your hand and pulls you into the circle. And now your feet are moving, not with skill, but with joy. You laugh when you trip. You laugh harder when someone else trips worse. There's no judgment here. Only rhythm. Only warmth. The dance circles widen and shrink. New people jump in. Old dancers step out to catch their breath or sip from a shared gourd of cold bissap. The drumbeat rises, falls, returns again like a tide. A man leaps into the center, spinning like he's made of cloth and wind. The crowd erupts in whistles and cheers. A girl follows, her steps sharp, playful, proud. The two trade steps like jokes, back and forth, until they're both laughing too hard to continue. You remember your cousin said last week, dancing is how we remind the ground we're still alive. She's right. You keep moving. Or the music moves you. You're no longer sure which. Eventually, the beat slows. The dancers scatter in waves. Some to sit, some to fetch water. A few to wrap themselves in cloth and lean against nearby walls, heart still beating to the ghost of the drum. You're panting, cheeks flushed, legs tired. But your spirit? Wide awake. The kora plays a slow, winding final tune, like a sigh that wants to last forever. You find your cousin again, and the two of you sit on the edge of the square. Not speaking, just watching the stars arrive, one at a time. Someone nearby hums a half-remembered song. A baby wails once, then stops, soothed before the second breath. A pot lid clangs in the distance. Jen again exhales. And you sit still, chest rising, eyes open, listening to a silence that's not empty, but full of music that hasn't yet been played. You don't remember standing up. One moment you're on the edge of the square. The next your feet are moving again. Slow this time, like the earth is heavier now. Or maybe just inviting you to walk softer. The stars are crowding in overhead. The moon has risen higher, pale and shy, lighting up the rooftops in ghost silver. Most of Jen has begun to withdraw indoors now, though a few voices linger on the edges, laughing low, telling one last story, negotiating bedtime the way only adults and overly persuasive children can. You return home slowly, feet brushing the familiar dust. There's no need to rush. The night won't leave without you. Your courtyard is quieter than before, but not empty. Lamps flicker in the corners. A cousin is curled on a mat, an arm over her eyes. Someone snores gently in the far room. The coals in the kitchen hearth have been banked for the night, faint red under the ash like glowing memories. You duck inside, back into your usual sleeping corner. Your mat is slightly askew, probably the dog's doing, but the pillow is still cool, and your wrapper is folded neatly, which feels like a small miracle. You stretch out and let yourself sink into the familiar creaks and sense of home. Roasted peanut, old wood, the faint perfume of smoke that clings to everything here. Your feet are sore. Your shoulders are pleasantly tired. Your head hums, not with noise, but with something quieter, resonance. You lie there for a while, not moving, not thinking too hard, just watching the ceiling, the patterns of shadow and lamplight dancing like slow moths. You imagine each flicker as a piece of your day, floating, fading, returning again. You remember the peanut woman's laugh, the market's chorus, the goat in a scarf. You remember the river breeze, and the child declaring your elephant drawing a duck. You remember your grandmother's side eye when you oversalted the stew, and the way her mouth tried not to smile when you fixed it. You remember dancing, not well, not gracefully, but completely. You remember the music not as sound, but as feeling. Then a small voice whispers near your head, "Are you awake?" You blink and turn. It's the tiniest cousin, the one with the sandal obsession and the unmatched talent for mid-nap drooling. She's awake, hair messy, blanket dragging behind her like a cape. "I had a dream," she whispers. You lift an eyebrow. "Was it a good one?" She nods. "There were lions, but nice ones. One gave me mango." You smile. "You should go tell them thank you in your dream. Maybe they'll share more." She nods solemnly and curls up beside you, head on your arm without asking, as if this was always the plan. Her breathing slows. The warmth of her small frame seeps into your side like a lullaby. Outside, the wind rustles again, like a hand brushing gently across a sleeping face. Inside, the walls hold everything: stories, songs, yawns, the faint crackle of memories. You lie still. Even blinking feels like a decision. Then, from somewhere outside the courtyard, you hear it. A final flute song. Just a few notes, drawn long and slow, like the musician is not playing for an audience, but to remind the night it's still beautiful. You close your eyes. The music weaves through the silence. And still, you do not sleep, because now comes the sacred ritual of nighttime thoughts. You think, not in straight lines, but in drifting loops, about everything and nothing, about how the stars always feel closer when you're too tired to name them, about the smell of fermented milk, about whether that merchant ever found his missing camel, or if the camel simply found a better job. You wonder if tomorrow will be like today. Probably, but maybe not. Maybe someone new will arrive. Maybe a griot will tell a story no one's heard before. Maybe a goat will sing. Again, historians still argue whether this kind of life was dull or divine. But here, wrapped in dust and dreams, with a child snoring softly beside you and a dog sprawled across your feet like a sandbag with opinions, you know the answer. There's nothing boring about breathing in rhythm with a place this alive. You shift your blanket a little tighter around your shoulders, careful not to wake the cousin whose foot has found its way into your hip. And as the final flute note fades, you whisper to no one in particular, "I'll remember this one." Then you let go. The city is still now. Not the kind of stillness that feels empty or forgotten, but a fullness that's reached its brim. Every alley has hushed, every rooftop turned away from the sky like it's had its share of stargazing, and the sand has settled so completely you'd think it had never been stirred. Jen, wrapped in its thick, earthen quiet, sleeps with both eyes closed. Inside the courtyard, the last of the lamp oil flickers out. Shadows return to their rightful places. The coals in the kitchen pit glow gently, like old friends unwilling to say goodbye just yet. Even the frogs outside the wall have slowed their rhythms, croaking now and long, drawn-out notes, like they, too, are halfway to dreaming. You lie still, barely breathing, heart slowed to match the pace of the place around you. The cousin pressed against your side has gone limp and warm, breathing with the rhythm of 1,000 naps before hers. Her hand clutches a corner of your wrap, as if to anchor herself to the world of stories she might still be wandering in. You stare at the dark ceiling, where the mud above shows tiny cracks. Not a flaw, just the way things breathe here, even walls. This home, this city, is not perfect, but it's whole. And you feel it now more than ever. As your mind tiptoes towards sleep, fragments of the day float back. You remember the way your grandmother stirred the pot, like it was a spell. The griot's voice rising just enough to make your heart quiet down. The stars overhead, falling and blinking like fireflies that never ask for attention. And the laughter, gods, the laughter. Even the goats had opinions. You feel your body soften, every muscle loosening. Your fingers no longer itch to fidget. Your legs no longer twitch. You are a stone slowly sinking into sand, being held in place not by gravity, but by belonging. A cool breeze dances over your skin. The dog shifts, then sighs. And outside, near the mosque, a final pair of footsteps shuffle by, soft and respectful, as if even the night deserves quiet. No one is waiting for you. No one is calling your name. There are no fires to tend, no millet to pound, no debates over pepper ratios or laundry strategy. Just now. Just stillness. Tomorrow will come. It always does. There will be dust and heat and roosters with unresolved anger issues. There will be bartering, storytelling, arguments over canoe parking, and someone swearing they saw a camel wearing jewelry again. But none of that is now. Now there's only breath. Yours, the city's, and the soft drumbeat of your heart, slowing. You pull the blanket over your shoulder. The cousin twitches once in her sleep. The wind kisses the edge of your mat, then leaves. You are here. You are home. And finally you drift. Wind down 300 words. So now, with your body resting and your mind floating somewhere between thought and dream, let everything soften. Let the details blur. Let the footsteps and laughter and dust of Jen fade into the background, like the final notes of a lullaby you almost remember. There's no more movement to follow. No more lists, no more remembering. Only the slow hush of a courtyard at rest. The city holds you like clay shaped by time, warm, imperfect, perfect. Picture the shadows curling around the walls. The way the stars have gathered above, not for show, but to keep quiet company. Let your breath move slower. Let your thoughts move even slower than that. The work is done. The stories are told. The millet is pounded. The stew has been tasted, argued about, and quietly celebrated. There is nothing more for you to do. Let your toes relax. Let your shoulders sink. Let your eyelids grow heavier than the desert stones carried by old traders across the salt roads. Let your mind be still like the river just before dawn, when not even the frogs speak. You are safe here, in this story, in this place, in this moment. If you listen closely, you might still hear a flute, far off. Or maybe it's the wind. Or maybe it's your own breath, weaving the last thread into a dream. And now sleep. Soft, slow, certain. Sleep. Good night, traveler.